What it do, YouTube? We back in the building. There's just no right way to do the intro. You can try anything, it's just nothing really flows, so you just gotta get straight into it. So I actually just moved into Washington, D.C. About to start my master's program after a year of, taking a gap from my undergrad. I finished school in San Diego, and I took 1 year to just, kind of just fell upon me actually. COVID and a couple other things came together, and that came into fruition, and I'm about to start school this week. So I kind of wanted to sum all of that together and have a cohesive piece of just what I learned this year in a gap year. And I want to first start by saying I highly recommend everyone take some gap time. It doesn't necessarily need to be a year, but I do think that period of time where you get to reflect on everything that you have done and look and plan for the future is extremely important, just for making sure that you are constantly aligned with what you really want. I think what happens sometimes is you can get so caught up in your day-to-day and start running where you sometimes forget why you're even doing some of the things that you're doing. And I think it's extremely important to always have that why, because you can just do so much more when you have that fuel to go. Let's get into, so I kind of wanted to do this and give a 10 things I learned and 10 things I would do differently if I was to do this gap year again. So number one, I would write down before I start my gap year, what are all the things that I want to do and why. I think the why is extremely crucial. So this is what I mean. I think when everyone thinks of gap year, it's like, oh, I want to travel, and then I want to, skydive, or I want to do all these really exhilarating things that look like it's really fun when I see people put on their social media. I think that a gap year needs to be, it is a year basically taking, there's multiple ways to look at, I guess, life in general. So let's say I'm looking at life career oriented, right? I'm like, okay, the way I look at my life is year by year by year. It's like, I'm going to be this junior position here and the next year, and that's how your entire life works. If that's the case, a gap year is quote unquote a gap year. But let's say I'm looking kind of at life holistically. Like, there's no such thing. What does it even mean to be taking a gap? Like, it's still life. Like, I'm still living. I'm still going through the same stresses as I normally do. I'm just not working a 40-hour job. Is that like, am I just taking a gap from 40 hours of work? Like, so I say that to say that, figuring out what exactly it is that you want to do and why is extremely crucial, because then you can start asking questions of what it is that you even want out of your gap year. I feel like I didn't really spend the time to really think about that. So the first 3-4 months I was just at home and I was kind of just taking online classes. I was studying for the GRE. I took that, but I didn't really understand like what exactly this whole year was going to be. I only really figured it out when I ended up in Hawaii, and that was my first travel out of the country, or out of the, I guess, mainland, this year, and that's where everything started, and that's where I just got this spark of like, whoa, I can actually be anywhere and do work this whole year. Why on earth am I going to do that from Fremont, California, which is where my home is from? So I think if I had been able to take the time and been like, okay, what I really want is to find some sort of meaning and purpose in life. I understand I didn't end up doing that, and I don't think I ever will. It's a lifelong pursuit. But the goal for me was never, I want to just like experience all these things so I can show people that I experienced it. It was like, I want to experience X, Y, and Z so I can learn something from it and then be able to live my life better after. So for me, what I ended up deciding my gap year was going to be 1 year of just learning from experience, from viewing the people that I lived with and the people that I saw, and understand how they live. Why do they live? How do they find purpose? How do they find meaning? And take the bits and parts that I really resonated with and try to add that into my own life. So that became my goal. And after that, I had a much more purposeful gap year, and I felt like that was a lot more useful. So that's number one. 2, alone trips. This one is key. I would highly recommend everyone not only do trips on their gap year with friends, take some time, just do it alone. It's so simple. And this is what I realized. To travel, this is all you gotta do. Book a place to stay and book the flight. Once you get there, you'll figure the rest out. Every time no matter how scary or how you don't think you can do it, you can do it. You are a human being who is capable of just like figuring things out. Like, our brains are wired different. Like, we will figure it out no matter where we go. We will never just be like, oh, I can't do anything, I'm just gonna die here. You know, our brains will just never allow that. We will constantly be creative to find ways. If you believe you have that skill, you can figure it out anywhere. So don't worry about being with people. I think there are two different things that can be learned from going on trips and having a gap year with people versus doing it alone. And I think they both are equally important. I think I did a lot of my trips this year with people. I feel like the traveling, whether it was like driving or like the flights, those were the times I was alone. And there was a few parts here and there where I was alone. But I think traveling alone really makes you introspective on this one particular thing. Why is fun important? Why is beauty important? That was one thing that I never could get my mind around because I didn't spend enough alone time. So I'd see all these beautiful things, right? Crater Lake, Mount Shasta, all these beautiful beaches in Hawaii, beaches in Mexico, women everywhere, beautiful people, things everywhere I went. And I never could figure out like, okay, then what? I'm looking at this really beautiful view and I'm going to see another beautiful view tomorrow. Now, what do I do with all this beauty? Do I just like look at it and appreciate it and move on with my life? Like, at what point am I fulfilled by beauty? Because there is a certain cap, at least in my experience, that all of these things can fill. Exhilaration can only fill you up so much. It's not like an endless thing of just like exhilaration. You just get tired after a while. And I think beauty, all these things are the same. But I feel like when you're with friends, you can kind of mask all of this introspection by just doing a lot of like fun things. Like you can just, and even if like, I can't exactly say why, but I feel like it is much easier to introspect when I'm alone. I'm not saying that it can't be done with people, because I guess like, why can't you just say, I'm going to go on a walk alone? So in theory, it can be done with friends too. You just have to make time for yourself and a substantial amount. Maybe be like, hey, these next 3 days, I'm going to go myself. Typically, there are going to be some sort of like car issues, like how am I actually going to travel? There's going to be some logistic problems that you're going to have to deal with there. But in theory, you can create alone time with groups as well. So I guess what I'm really trying to say is create spaces of alone time. Okay, number 3, record yourself. And this is what I mean by that. This whole year, one thing that I've really had time to think about is, what is the point of memories? Why show things to other people? What is the point of me taking pictures of everything I see? What is the point of me, showing my friends that, hey, I went here? What is the point of all of this? Is it to show that I'm telling everyone else, hey, look at me, I'm traveling? Like, is that the point of this gap year? Because at some point, that's what it comes down to. If all I'm doing is taking pictures and my enjoyment is actually in the fact of other people knowing that I'm traveling, I first personally felt that it was not the same, because I had moments like that for sure. But there were times where I really felt connected to myself and my growth and who I was as a person and just present. And those were the times I was definitely the most fulfilled. And so I would say being able to record yourself like the way I'm doing right now, on your phone, some way to actually track your progress and what you've seen through the trip, and just recording it and throwing it away. It doesn't matter who sees it. It's not even for anyone. It is just to record it. And the main reason for that is not so I can go listen back to it later, but so that I can actually spend that time where I'm recording introspecting. And that process in itself really puts ideas and things into your mind. And as I'm speaking too, I start thinking of things that I didn't think of before. So I would say, curated media, which is like taking pictures for others, can oftentimes just not be genuine at all. And so when I say record yourself, I mean really have it on your phone and leave it on your phone forever. It is that period of recording which is beautiful. And if someone watches it, someone watches it. I didn't do that, but I definitely would if I did this again. All right, number 4. Take time to actually reflect and think. And I feel like this is kind of connected with number 3. Like, go on a walk and actually think, what did I see this week? What did I see this month? I feel like, if without that process of like actually reflecting, it's very hard to actually learn something that sticks with you. You can be like, oh my God, that was really cool. I saw that. I'm going to keep that with me. But then it just gets to the back of your mind. But you actually spend time and you're like, why did that particular situation and interaction make me feel that way? right? That was one thing I actually felt a lot. That I interacted with so many strangers this year, and it was just like, what type of interactions do I like? Which ones make me feel uncomfortable? Why did they make me feel uncomfortable? Those questions can only really be pondered upon if you sit there and think. And I feel like I had some really cool breakthroughs this year, just like being in situations where I felt really annoyed or uncomfortable, and it opened it up a lot about me. So that's another big one. This is the next one. This one was really big for me, and so I wanted to share this one for sure. So this last year I met probably, I would say 100 to 200 to 300 people. Amazing, fantastic human beings. Now, that being said, I think one problem of social media is that you never actually truly appreciate someone for their existence, because you always in the back of your mind are like, I can keep you with me once I leave this place. You're not gone. I'm going to see you on social media. Let me get your ad. Let me get your number. While the reality is, I am never going to see these people ever again. That was it. That one day, 1 week was it, and that it was done. If I didn't, get their ad, or I didn't, be like, okay, let me get your email, whatever, I would actually spend that time, and especially when we were leaving, to look at them in their eye and be like, hey, even though I will never see you again, I really appreciate you for the time that we spent this week or day or whatever. And I feel like those are ways you genuinely appreciate people for existing. And this is why. I feel like when I was first starting out, I was like, oh my God, you're cool. Please stay with me. You're cool. Like, don't leave me. Like, be in my life for the rest of my life. This is what I realized. There are cool people in every country, every city, every state that speak every language, that is every gender, that is just people are very cool. So it's like, you're never like at like a lack of cool people. And let me maybe articulate what I mean by when I say cool. For me, cool means someone who is open-minded, somebody who is understanding, somebody who is motivated to live, who works hard at whatever they're doing, be it, it could be hardworking or basically anything. Just like someone who's like enjoying life from a sober perspective. That's someone who's cool to me. And I met people like that everywhere. So it was like, there's not some sort of like sparsity of these type of people. So, you don't have to hold on to anyone, but really appreciate them, because it's like, hey, this is the only time I'm ever going to run into you. And it has been a crazy way that we have come together in the same place. And I really appreciate you for being alive. And I feel like I did that half the time. The other half the time I was like, all right, what's your Instagram? What's your number? We'll just stay in touch. It happens. Most of the time it doesn't. So that's a big one. And in conclusion, there are a lot of really awesome people in this world, which made me really happy. Okay, next. I say take more Uno pictures. This is what an Uno picture is. The way I kind of think about it is, if a picture is taken more than once, for me, it loses its realness. It's like core capture of the moment. I took a lot of Polaroids. I would have loved to have taken so much more. Same with pictures on your phone. I feel like once more than one is taken, you are trying to, position the image in such a way where it expresses something that you want, which I feel like then ends up expressing a lot more bias than you would ever want it to actually do. So I feel like the way to kind of approach that is just take one picture, no matter how it turns out, as long as it's not like super blurry or something. That captures that moment for what it is, what it was, so I feel like Uno pictures are the way to go with pictures. All right, so the next one. This is about planning and budgeting. Plan ahead and budget. Okay, so what does plan ahead mean? The same way with the first one was have a list, write down everything you want to do, see places you want to be, and then write down a bunch of time you're going to allocate to do spontaneous things, right? So the problem is you can go either two way. Have such a planned schedule that you never really get to experience like that real feeling of freedom in traveling, when you just like do things you never thought you would do. If you already have it down on a plan, your paper, you never get that into that flow state of where you're just like in the flow. You're just like, oh my God, I never thought I would be here on this boat just in the middle of nowhere with people I don't even know, but here I am. But if it was on your paper, that was exactly planned. So I feel like it is very difficult to find that balance between being planned and being spontaneous, but you need both. You cannot only be spontaneous, because then nothing gets done a lot of the times. And you can't only be planned, because you can't sometimes experience those like just random events. So in planning, budgeting is huge. So I think a lot of times what ends up getting missed on budgets is, your Uber costs, there's some extra souvenir cost, and it all adds up. Food, obviously, I feel like everyone relatively budgets for food and rent, and that's for sure you should do. But there are a lot of additional costs that end up coming up, and I think the transportation one is a big one. But being able to write down, like, this is the max I'm going to spend. I'm not spending more than this. And then going from there, I think, is a move. I think if you, say I'm 500 for rent, 500 for food, and you just keep adding it, you can keep adding stuff. But if you're like, this whole trip, I'm spending 1,000, I'm going to figure out all the other things to fit in that budget, I think is extremely helpful for you and for your money. And another thing about budgeting is by budgeting, you can really have so much more fun. So when I was in the one place I did the most activities was in Hawaii. We were there for a month. I went skydiving, scuba diving, we were mopeding, and all of these things ended up costing a lot of money. So, it made me feel a lot better when I already had my entire budget out in the beginning of the month. I'm like, I'm going to spend this much. And I was under that. So even when I did spend that money, I didn't feel guilty or bad or anything, because I was like, all right, I'm still under my budget. I knew I was getting into this, right? So that was key. And, I guess with budgeting, if you're working remotely, always making more than you're spending, you're totally chilling then. And it's a good feeling when you get to have a lot of fun and be like, I still made more than I spent. Okay, next. So this one is about housing. One thing I learned on my road trip to DC, 2-week road trip, you can camp everywhere for free. If you just pull up free camping online, you can find, they literally give you so many sites everywhere where you can just pull up, be like, all right, free camping. So here's one thing, they may not have all the amenities you need. So that's like bathroom, water. So as long as you have gallon water in your car, you have food, some food like bananas, snacks in your car, and you have wet wipes, toilet paper in your car, you can use the restroom there. You just dig a hole, use the restroom. There is a certain level of, being kind of free that you're going to need, but you can really just camp everywhere for free. We basically only got a hotel 2 times, and that's because we were in Chicago and we were in Boise. And apart from that, we were camping almost the rest of the trip. So camping is huge. I would definitely recommend it, and it makes your traveling so much cheaper. In addition to that, Airbnb, if you can rent it out for like a month, they oftentimes give you big deals. So you can probably get a really awesome spot for like $1,500, $1,400, especially if you're sharing with multiple people, which rent comes out to like $700, $800 a month, which is awesome. And you can live in amazing places. So Airbnb oftentimes has some really good plans. If you're going somewhere for a week, hostels are great. Hostels are really cool. I only stayed in one when I went to Boston, stayed there for 5 days. It was like shared restroom, but we did have our own room, but it was like a tiny little closet with just like a bed. That's it. There's nothing else in there, but it was good enough, I did have a really interesting experience there. Long story short, this dude who was living above me basically came and knocked on my door at 4:30 in the morning. He was like, did you take my keys? I woke up, I was like, what are you talking about? I'm trying to sleep. It's like, he was trying to open my door too. He's like, you took my keys? I was like, dog, I don't know what you're talking about, but I did not take your keys. And then he was like, call the landlord right now. And I called the landlord at 4:30 in the morning. It was early. And long story short, he had locked himself out of his room, but then just made this huge hassle to everyone to get his keys. And eventually the landlord was just like, he left it in the room. So we were just like, okay. But so I guess you probably will meet some interesting people, but it's all part of the adventure. So the next one is food. So while we were camping, we met some people who brought like simple like stoves, things like that, and they would set up a fire, put the stove on top, and a lot of campfires have the tools for that. And they just throw some meat on top, or they throw something there and they have food. And that's a great way to cook while you're on the road. Another thing I would say is, eating out, obviously you'd want to minimize as much as possible. In a lot of my trips, we basically cooked every day. So this is one of the advantages of traveling with people, is that we had a really good routine of okay, you cut the vegetables, you cook, you do the dishes. It was nice. So we had just great experiences with food. When we went to Mexico, it was awesome because food was so cheap there. We were eating like kings and queens, we were like royalty, and it would be like $35, $40. So that was awesome. So I would say, traveling out of the country also is a great way to save money on food. And so yeah, but Another thing is also when you're traveling, like there is so much great food stuff. So I don't even know if a lot of times you want to save so much money on food, because food sometimes, like one of the trips like was literally centered around food. We'd be like, all right, what are we doing today? And we'd pick 2 food spots, and that's what we would center the rest of the day around. Food was essential because we just had bomb food all the time. So that was awesome. But in conclusion, this is what I would say. Gap time is extremely key, but you want to make sure it just doesn't go on for too long. Maybe you do, I don't know. I guess it depends on what you kind of are looking for in life. But for me, I think I've been brought up to be a little more career oriented, or at least like quote unquote accomplishment oriented, whatever that means. So like for me, like taking too long of a gap, or like even like not doing anything that feels like you're accomplishing something, you're doing something, oftentimes gives me a lot of like stress. So this last year has been like a really different experience in that even in times where I was doing nothing, I was looking to learn. I picked up so many hobbies, from reading every day. I was playing the saxophone for a while. I was singing. I was working out, meditating. Like it was really cool to just like have the time to like find those experiences and really like figure out that like I'm a capable human being, you know, and capable in like, this is what I realized. Capable, I don't want to be capable only in like one aspect of that word. Like, oh, I'm really good at math. Oh, I'm really good at computer science. Because that one skill is not transferable anywhere else. I have to fix my bike. I didn't know how to do it. I was like, what are these parts? So I got help. I learned that. Okay, car breaks down. What is going on here? You need to fish. You need to camp. Like there are so many skills that are useful, and career, or whatever your skills are needed for your career, is one skill. That's not the only skill. So looking at the gap year as opposed to just like a time to be lazy, as opposed to it being a time to learn about other aspects of being a holistic self, I think is a great way to go about it, because you can learn so much if you spend the time right. If I had spent the whole time just watching YouTube on my laptop, it would have been a completely different year, you know. And I feel like that Hawaii trip really just opened up my eyes to be like, I have the freedom to go anywhere in this world, and I'm gonna go use it, right? So I really wish all of you the best of luck. I hope if you even got one thing out of this, I'm really happy. And let me know how your gap year went, or gap time.